trying to get a sense as to who our ebook and audiobook users are. They don't necessarily identify themselves. We don't really know what they're reading or listening to. The dashboard statistical information that we get from the various vendors is okay. Do you see the industry kind of improving in that direction, or have people kind of, we can't be alone in this, you know, we're kind of buying titles blind and not really getting a sense as to how they're being used, or it's a very awkward situation. I'm in a small library.
Yep.
But we have an active community. So what do you see the industry moving in that direction in terms of really giving us an opportunity to put our e-dollars on the table effectively?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I have a few thoughts, and I want to defer to James because he's, I mean, he previously worked at New York Public Library and has been grappling this for many more years than I have. So the first thing I'll note is that the circulation manager integrates with Google Analytics as well, and that tracks, as Google Analytics does, in much more detail, patron activity within SimplyE, so you can see from a combined collection view what's the most popular titles or popular title or titles that is not obfuscated by the provider that you are purchasing your materials from, and that also is not skewed by a mobile app that's promoting romance titles because they are the most lucrative for that platform to sell to you. So this platform is pushing us in the right direction to have non-biased statistics from your combined collection, so that you can start to make those decisions. With that said, LYRASIS has talked internally about ways that we can start to add additional statistics to the dashboard to give you more informed information about the usage of your collection. Certainly, our conversations always come back to also maintaining patron privacy. So certainly no patrons are identified here in the circulation manager. None of that is captured. But I think there's a balance to be struck there so that you can have a better understanding of who your patrons are, how they're using your collection to inform your purchasing decisions. I mean, we haven't solved that, we haven't cracked that nut, so to speak, but it's certainly something that LYRASIS is aware of. And as we start to work with all of you more directly, we look forward to having those conversations and learning more about what your needs are and the ways that we can develop potentially new functionality or new statistics that are captured either here in the circulation manager or even in Google Analytics that will help you kind of wrestle with those questions in a way that's unbiased and not focused from the vendor perspective of always wanting to steer you in the decision of making, or the direction of making a decision that's going to be, regardless, purchase more content. So an unbiased perspective. But I'll defer to James as well, because I'm sure he's been more involved in conversations there as well.
No, I think Carissa states it quite well. The first step for us in this project was a biased view of the demand that are coming from patrons. When we actually studied this with the app, it was at NYPL, we saw before we released it that 50% of our demand was only being serviced by 1% of our collection. Once we released SimplyE and gave patrons a better visibility of what was available immediately, as well as what was in the collection, as opposed to those top 1% titles, we saw our demand curves flatten out and people getting deeper into the catalog, borrowing materials that they otherwise weren't getting exposed to by the vendor apps. And when you look at that, if I show, what you show someone matters when they're making a selection. When we surveyed nationally, we found that 3-2, people prefer to browse for something to read versus search for a particular title. And so by letting them have an easier time browsing and discovering the recommendation of the library, which we interpreted as the curatorial selection of titles by the library as a recommendation, we saw that their barring patterns changed. And when you do the Google Analytics, you can actually see a difference in what would be like the top 10 titles in Overdrive that they would circulate through their app versus what we would circulate through our library staff recommendation lanes, etc. And they're very different. There was no overlap in the titles. And we had actually the majority of the lending going through SimplyE at NYPL. So we think the librarians are better situated to make that recommendation, even if it's as simple as the titles you purchase. We just haven't had the tool yet until SimplyE to expose the patrons to that, our curatorial recommendations, other than if they physically walked into a library and we had them sitting out on a shelf or a table out front. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. This might be getting a little old, but the Netflix algorithm of having the patron rank whether they liked it or didn't like it, and then suggesting titles in this particular case with SimplyE across collections rather than within a particular collection would reveal more information to the patron. I'm sure you've kind of looked at that.
Yeah, we have. We actually look, the way these lanes populate is they're never the same over the course of a day. They will refresh, and they're being ranked by availability first, and then second by their popularity, and that popularity is measured by how often they search, as well as any type of information we get in terms of a quality rating from a vendor site if they've rated something well. So we do have kind of that metric driving this a little, but we're also throwing some randomness and serendipity in to help pull the reader deeper into the potential reader deeper into the collection to find something that they may not have been exposed to.
Yeah, okay.
And so we saw that, just to follow up on that 1%, with 50% of demand to 1% of the titles. As soon as we released the first month, we hit 3%, then 6% the next month, then 9%. Then we just stopped tracking because we saw that we were doing exactly what we wanted. We were driving the patron deeper into other books, which from one standpoint, that helps us get better ROI out of our titles too. So if you have time-limited titles, I think it was Macmillan or one of them said that the average out of the 26 lens titles, they would only get about 11 lens in the period before it expires, which isn't a great ROI. With this, you can drive people at that available title and get a better chance of getting ROI out of it.